Hello race fans on this fine winter's morning. It is Jake. I am back once again. So as a Christmas treat for you, I have got a special video today. A lot of you ask me why I only ever put up videos where I do well, I win races, or we're very competitive. Well, that's because it's hard enough to get views for the good videos anyway. However, today we're going to take a look back at a very special race, very close to my heart, a race from just over 1 year ago in the Zwift Racing League, and this is my most heartbreaking race of all time. I still have nightmares about it to this day, and we're going to have a look at why it was my most heartbreaking race of all time, but also my most important. I learned more from this race than any race I've ever had before, and it's super valuable to look back at those races where we made mistakes, where it didn't go right, and understand what we can do better, what we can learn from it. And suffice to say, this is the most dramatic race finish we've ever seen on the channel. So let's dive straight in. We're going to have a look at it, see what this race has to offer. Buckle up, this one is going to be insane. Okay people, let's do it. Let's jump straight into the main event and let's have a look at this insane, brutal race and have a look at what you've all paid to see, namely me suffering like you've never seen me suffer before. And for those of you that love to skip through the video, kill my YouTube retention rate, don't worry, I've got you covered. I still love you. The time codes are at the bottom of the video so you can skip through and have a look at the most important parts. And this race's course is Tour of To It Well. So it's a Zwift Racing League race. You all know what that means. It means that there will be fastest through the segment and first across the line points for each segment. As we have a look at the course here, you can see there is only one segment that's scored, and that is the Yorkshire KOM reverse. Very nasty, 1.2 kilometer climb, 3.8% average. But as you can see from the rest of the course, it's pretty nasty as well. It's not exactly easy straight after that, so there's plenty of climbing. We're doing 4 laps of this, which means at 10k a lap, 43 kilometers. So that's going to be over an hour of racing. It's going to be brutal, attritional, and I promise you it's going to be absolutely chocked full of mistakes. Let's get this one kicked off. Let's roll out of the pen and let's have a look at the first mistake, which is not warming up properly. The most rookie of all mistakes. So, stupid mistake. I should know better than that. I can't remember if it was a tech issue. I can't remember if I couldn't get my heart rate monitor working. Whatever it was a mistake. I didn't warm up properly and I definitely wasn't ready for the start of this race. Which, looking at the profile, considering there's a KOM that's going to be scored in the first kilometer of this race, is a titanic mistake. So, really, really stupid. So the first mistake, and we haven't even started the race yet, that must be some kind of record, but don't worry, we're going to add more to it before too long. As we hit the base of the first scored segment, the Yorkshire Reverse KOM. Now, this is mistake number 2. I told you we wouldn't have to wait long. On this segment, I have not been tasked by my team with scoring points, so I'm supposed to be saving myself for the last 2 laps and for the finish. So I have teammates that are supposed to be going as hard as they possibly can on this segment, meaning that I am supposed to just surf the wheels, save as much energy as I can. However, I did it very, very badly. As you can see, when we hit the base of the KOM, I'm way too far back. I'm like 50th place out of 72 riders, and I'm thinking I'll just close the wheels. There's so much draft here that this is going to be all right. I'll just put in a little bit of a surge at the bottom, and then I'll just sort of do 3, 3.5, 4, up the base of this comp, save what I can, and just make sure that I'm closing the wheels, surfing the gaps, and getting to the front of the group. However, I seriously underestimated the power and the pace of the group, and the riders on the front, going as hard as they can, really strung this group out, thread it all over the KOM, and as you can see, I am really starting to hit difficulty here because I'm having to close pretty much every gap on my way up this group. And moving up from 50th place at the back all the way to the front turns out to be so much harder than I gave it credit for. I have really gone harder here than I probably would have had to do to stay in the front group if I'd been at the front at the start of the climb. And as you can see here, it all starts to unravel as the gaps just open up in front of me as people make a play for those FTS and foul points. I end up making a sprint, ending up in about 15th place. And here we go, the next mistake. I am caught in no man's land. I'm doing big numbers there, trying to get on, over 400 watts at times. And as you can see, I'm caught 45 meters ahead of the group behind me and just 20 meters back from that front group of 13. Now, I am really starting to panic here. This is a huge mistake from me. I'm usually always making sure I'm at the front of these groups. So as I can see this group getting away from me, as I'm killing myself to try and get on, I can just see them getting further and further away. So I feel at this point like that is my race over. However, the next mistake is just around the corner, so don't panic. What I should have done is eased up. The group behind me is gaining on me fast. I should have waited for them, made an effort to jump onto them as they come past and work with them. But that group on this descent, including my 100-kilogram teammate Steve, comes flying past me and I've let them go. I've been dropped by a second group, so another huge mistake here. And I'm just can't believe what I've done there. I can't believe my looks. I'm thinking, this is race over. I'm not even going to be able to get into the top 20 because I don't know how to close a wheel, get onto a group and descend properly. And I'm saved a little bit here by that incline. So I do what I think is a genius move and I deploy my feather power up thinking this is the moment, this is when I've got to use it to get back on. However, yet another mistake. As you can see, the group behind me caught me anyway, and they're going to catch the group ahead on this rise. So I could have just sat with the group behind me that wasn't even in the top 20, saved my power up, not used all that energy trying to bridge across and failing, and still been in the front of this group. So I've just used so much energy that I didn't need to use, panicked, used anyway, and then I'm going to need later on. So this is just a catalogue of errors, guys. This is a 101 in how not to race, how to panic, and how not to read the race situation correctly. So really good tips for you here. Please make sure you're not doing any of these things. So at this point, I feel like I've been in a car crash. I can't quite believe the mistakes I've just made. And I am just praying for a bit of recovery here so we can try and get some energy back. And as you can see, the group itself is still quite big at the front. It is a little bit spread out on this little rise, but we're going to skip through to the next bit, have a look at the next difficulty, and see what the next mistake is. And as we're doing that, I just want to say thank you to everybody that watches the channel, that subscribes especially. We've just hit the magical 500 subscriber mark on YouTube, so really, really pleased about that. Subscribes, watches, likes, comments. It all goes a huge way with the mystical YouTube algorithm and means that I don't spend hours editing these videos for nobody to watch, which is just kind of creepy and sad and gives me the motivation to keep making them. And that's where one of our mistakes comes back to haunt us. As we can see, we hit the base of Pot Bank and a flurry of feathers go off around us, except we don't have one because we used it earlier on when we didn't need to. So instead, we're just going to have to grit our teeth, bite down on the mouthpiece, go as hard as we can, just try and get out the saddle, grind it up there if we can, close those gaps and make sure that we are in the front because this group is down to about 20 now, and by the time we're at the top of Pot Bank here, it's going to be considerably less than that. If we're not at the front of this group, we definitely can't win the race, we definitely can't pick up any foul or FTS points later on, so we're going to have to make sure. And as I look up that hill, it looks like a very long way to the top. There are plenty of people ahead of us. The gaps are starting to open, even though I'm doing over 400 watts. I can see the gaps just getting bigger and bigger, so extremely demoralizing there. I'm just trying to do my best. There's still a tiny bit of draft at 18 kph. It is the limit, the bare minimum of the speed that you need to get a draft benefit in Zwift. So I'm just going to make sure. I can see my 101 kilogram teammate Steve there is just getting dropped around me, so he's done extremely well to still be there at the top of this climb, but it means that I'm going to have to push on, push past him and get to the front. I can see my teammate David has got a gap of 5 seconds over everybody else, so I'm definitely not going to pull the group up to him. I'm either going to have to sit in behind them and let them drag me to him, or maybe I will try and bridge across. But considering the energy levels that we've got now, the energy levels that we've already used, I can't bridge across. I'm already on the limit here, so I'm just going to have to sit in, let the other teams drag me across. And as we do that, the pace of this attack seems to go out a little bit and the group comes back together again. So I'm just going to sit on, make sure that I am up there with David as the group catches him. And we'll skip it on to the next part. And as we're doing that, we can see how hard it was for the first 10 minutes of a race. That's a lot of red. And as further evidence, you can see, has anybody ever had a gel 12 minutes into a race before? Well, you've seen it now. You've seen it all. That's how brutal this was. I am begging for carbs, and we are literally 12 minutes into a race that's going to be probably over an hour, which probably doesn't bode massively well. And that takes us pretty much without incident to the end of the lap and to the start of the next KOM, which we remember is about 1k after the lap banner. And on this one, my aim is to, again, sit in, not really do more than I have to do. I'm still really cooked. I'm still trying to save myself for the last couple of laps in the finish. So I'm going to let my teammates do the work here, and I'm going to try and close the wheels. And as we can see here, my teammate David has attacked off the front to try and force the group to chase him and pick up some FAL and FTS points, and he does a fantastic job. So I sit at the back, I see the opportunity as we get to the banner to just put in a surge, pick up a couple of foul points, so I do that, but I'm going to count that one as a mistake because as you can see, I come quite easily to the front of the group here in third place, and realistically, I should have used some of that energy to get third place foul points. It probably was a mistake. I probably thought everyone else was a little bit stronger than they were, and I had a little bit less in the tank than I did. So yeah, we're counting that as a mistake. I had to deploy my anvil to try and get some recovery, hope that the group comes past me, and I managed to get on them this time without getting dropped. So the front two riders, David and Tucker, are still away. I'm not going to chase them, of course, because that's my teammate, but I want to be with them if they bridge across. So let's see if the group comes back together. The two of them do a great job keeping away from the front of the group, especially considering as there isn't much of an organised chase behind, but as we hit that next long sustained rise, the groups come back together again and they get reabsorbed into the peloton. So let's skip forward, have a look at the next difficulty. As we're doing that, I'm going to talk to you about taking a couple of weeks off the bike for an end of season break. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this one. I'm interested to hear what those of you out there do with your training, with your racing. Do you take any time off the bike? Now, I recently saw an interesting GCN video where they interviewed a load of different pros, and really some of the best pros in the world. You're talking people like Pogacar, Sagan, really top riders. So really interesting to hear what they do. And most of those pros seem to take at least 3 or 4 weeks off the bike totally at the end of every season. So that involves no zone 2, no easy riding, nothing, just that time totally off the bike. Now, some take 2 weeks, some take 4 weeks, but I thought that was really interesting. I just assumed that the pros didn't really take much time off the bike, and if they did, they'd still be riding zone 1, zone 2. So it was really interesting to hear that they take that time off completely at the end of every season to reset, recover, recharge, and then be ready to go again for the start of the next season. So this season, I'm going to try the same thing myself. I found previously that my biggest breakthroughs on the bike have come after I've taken a period off the bike. Now that includes taking time off the bike for broken bones, taking recovery weeks, and taking end of season breaks. After all of those different kinds of breaks, I've come back, I've trained, and I've hit higher levels than I had before the break. So this season, I've just hit my best ever numbers at the end of this year. I've hit my best numbers for every metric between 1 minute and 60-minute values all the way up. When that peak was starting to come off a little bit in the last couple of weeks, I thought now is the time to take that break. So I'm doing it, and I'm going to be really interested to see when I come back, will I be able to hit bigger numbers than I could before? The first few weeks, obviously not. The first few weeks will be about getting those numbers back to the level they were before and then trying to push past them. I'm going to wait until after Christmas to take that end of season break, but my numbers were starting to decline a little bit, I think due to illness and the fact that I've been working nights the last month or so, combined with the fact that I seem to have the world's most unique big chain ring through my drive shaft, which has given up the ghost, means I need to replace it. I bought a part, it didn't fit, even though it's got the right dimensions, presumably because I've got the world's most unique big chain ring. So I'm just trying to sort that out. With illness, it seemed like a good idea to bring that end of season break forward a little bit now and take that time off the bike and come back stronger. That's why all you lucky people have got this special episode this week, this retro flashback, this vintage flashback, where we go back, we have a look at me when I wasn't the polished, pristine racer that I put out to you on YouTube, and I was learning how to hone my racecraft. So you're welcome. I'm facing my PTSD just for your entertainment. Don't say I never do anything for you. So remember, let me know in the comments, do you take an end of season break? If so, how long do you take? And do you find it as difficult as me when you come back that first ride? Do you really struggle to hit numbers that are even like half of what you usually hit and you're dying to hit them? So let me know, and let's have a look at the next KOM, third out of 4 KOMs. And I know pretty much at the start of this one that I'm in a bit of trouble, I'm in a bit of difficulty, and I'm going to struggle to score points. But there's only 12, 13 riders in this group, so I know that I just have to try and stick at the front, not get dropped, and I should be able to pick up a few points. But that is easier said than done when you are cooked and you've wasted your energy after that first climb trying to get back on. So as we can see here, I'm putting in energy and the group is getting away from me. The gaps are starting to open up ahead of me, and once again I've made a titanic mistake that is going to cost me later on. So those gaps are opening up. There's a group of maybe 4 or 5 riders ahead of me, and that is a huge mistake to let the wheel go there. I should have done everything I could to stay in that group because the draft is still so big. There's 30 kph we're going right now. That's a huge amount of draft. So those riders in that front 3 or 4 are getting that draft and I am not. So I make the decision here to try and budge up, try and get on as best as I can towards the top of this climb to try and dust off the riders behind me and steal a few points from them as well. And as I do so, I go through the banner, I see my old friend Armitage, and I manage to get onto his wheel as he deploys the anvil. So he didn't make a mistake. He used that power up at the perfect time, the perfect place, and that's how you do it. So I've learned from my mistake there. That was a mistake to get dropped. I shouldn't have let the wheel go. And those riders are just getting further and further away. So at this point, I'm pretty much resigned to the fact that I am gone from the front of the race. I'm not going to be there at the end to contest for the win, and I'm just going to have to try and do what I can with foul points on the next lap and scoop up whatever's left. As I'm thinking that to myself, we get joined by another strong rider, so there's 3 of us here, and that gives us a bit of respite. It means that the group of 5 riders ahead still outnumbers us 5-3, but at least I'm not solo this time, and I learned from my mistake last time again, and I put in a surge here to not let that rider get away from me and Armitage on the descent. I'm not letting him go this time, I'm jumping on. So I'm trying not to panic, but I'm basically thinking that the race is probably over here. However, pretty much at the same spot as on lap 1, the race comes back together again on this little rise. We join the 5 riders ahead of us, and the riders behind us link up with us also to form a reduced front group. Which means there's going to be roughly 10 of us heading into the final lap at the final KOM, and then probably the finish. But before we get to that last lap, we've still got a couple of mistakes to be made that are going to cost us later on. So let's have a look. As for some reason, I come to the front of the group here and start pulling. I thought that one of the riders off the back was in difficulty and we could maybe bin them off here, but that just seemed to be ambitious and didn't really happen. So I come to the front of the group and start pacing at tempo, which in retrospect seems like a really weird thing to do, or very, very ambitious. So yeah, probably not the cleverest move there, especially with the pain that's yet to come. So this deep in the race, we're still making mistakes, still showing you how not to do it. So I continue pulling like some ill-advised government mule until we get over the top of this climb, and then I ease up briefly. It looks like I have learned my lesson until we hit Pot Bank, and I do quite well at the base of Pot Bank to just draft correctly, make sure that I am not doing too much work, and then as we get halfway up the climb, I once again come to the front of the group and start inexplicably pulling. I think that we're going to be able to drop somebody. Respondek at the back of the group is one of our biggest enemies. He's probably the best sprinter that's not in our team. So I make the decision to keep pulling there. And lo and behold, unfortunately, it doesn't work. He gets back on anyway. So yet another mistake, more energy wasted. And at this point, you think I would have had enough punishment. I would stop doing this to myself. But no, for some reason, I've just decided to keep on doing it. So as we get to the top of Pot Bank, nobody's distance, I've used a lot of energy, we're heading towards that final lap, and this is just one of those races. Have you ever had a race where it just felt like you were constantly being punched in the face every minute, every second, every pedal stroke? Well, that was it for me. This was probably the hardest race I'd ever done up until this point. It was just the constant attritional climbs, efforts, segments, people pushing the pace, trying and failing to get on, mistakes. Nothing had gone right. I hated literally every second of this race, everything about it. But the one thing that I do well is I learn from my mistakes, and this is lap 4, so you would hope by now that I have learned from all of those mistakes in the first 3 laps, and I'm starting to feel okay. I'm starting to feel the legs are finally loosening up a bit. Have you ever had a race like that where you felt terrible, absolutely terrible for the first 45 minutes, however long it is, and then suddenly, out of nowhere, you're starting to feel a little bit better. The legs are starting to come back to life a bit. It's probably that everybody else has just cooked themselves and is totally exhausted. Maybe it's that gel that we had at the 12-minute mark kicking in. Maybe it's the fact that I've taken everything that these riders have got and I'm still here and I've not been binned off the back yet. But it feels like we're turning a corner, and this is going to be it. This is going to be the lap where we learn from all those mistakes, thread it all together, and we're going to make this one work. We're going to do everything right, at least as much as we can right, and take this to the finish. At least That's what I think, and that's what I'm feeling. But let's see, does it pan out that way? As we hit the final the final time, I thought we would never get here, but finally, here it is. I am trying to learn from the mistakes of the first 3 laps, so I am not going to let the wheels go. I'm going to sit at the front of the race. I've just used my power up on the flat where it's useful, and now I'm going to make sure that I'm not getting dropped. As I said, I'm feeling good. The last couple of times I thought I probably should have gone earlier on this climb and put people under pressure. Haven't really got the sprint today, but maybe I can smother them with that sustained pressure. So I've decided to do that. I can see the top of the com from here, so I'm just going to keep on the gas from here on out and see how many points we can try and pick up. Can we put anybody under pressure into difficulties and maybe get rid of them before we hit the final couple of climbs and inevitably that sprint finish? So I look around me here and I see that people aren't really wanting to follow the wheel here, so they must be suffering. Everybody's tired. On this final lap, my teammate David comes with me. He closes the wheel, but as I look in the rider list on the right hand side, I can see the gaps opening up, and that gives me some strength to keep on pushing. Using this renewed strength, this renewed energy, I'm feeling so much better now, and this is giving me even more strength to keep on pushing. There's a rider 40 meters off the back here, so I know this must be doing something. Riders are having to use their power-ups to come with me. I may be pacing a little bit, but that's kind of by design, and we're going to put in a sustained push here at the top. I see that rider trying to mug me off and steal the points, but I've worked hard for these, and I want those foul points, so I come around him, but unfortunately, I get mugged off by our friend Respondek, getting revenge for me trying to get rid of him on the climb on Pot Bank. But I learned from my mistakes there. We got second foul points. That's the best effort we did in the whole race. And I've learned from my mistakes on lap 1. I'm copying my friend Armitage. I'm using that anvil power up as soon as we go through the top. And look, it's super effective. It works really, really well. And I feel like it's all coming together now. We're starting to put the pieces of the jigsaw together. We've learned from those mistakes. We're saving energy now. And this is going to come in super useful later on. And I'm determined to make it count this time. So as we hit this next rise, I don't come to the front. I don't start needlessly pulling because I've learned from my mistakes from the last few laps. And instead, I just make sure that I'm not getting gapped. I'm not getting dropped. I'm not at the back of the group. I'm at the front so I can watch any surges or attacks because I've learned from my mistakes from the last few laps. And we've come to the point of the race where I'm actually going to have to start thinking about the finish. And I hadn't even really thought about the finish at all yet because I just didn't think I was going to be there at the front of the race. But thinking about what's happened in the last few laps, I know that I haven't really got much of a sprint today, which is unusual. Usually I'd back my sprint, especially against these racers who I've raced with for 8 weeks until this point. And I know that I have the best sprint out of them. But today I just can't really get near the front of the group that easily. Every time I'm trying to attack the FTS and the FAL segments, I'm struggling. So I made the decision that I'm probably not going to be able to win a sprint. So how can I most effectively approach this finish, try and get the win, support my team and my teammates, get as many points as possible? And I realised that realistically, I've got 1 or maybe 2 opportunities, and it's going to be, I'm going to have to try and launch an attack and stay away either on Pot Bank or maybe that little kicker just before the finish. And that way, my teammate David, who's definitely one of the best 2 sprinters in this group along with Respondek, has a great chance of winning if he just sits in and sits on me if they do catch me. So that's it. That's what it's going to be. We've made the decision. I'm thinking I'm going to need a decent gap and I'm going to need to go a decent way out because otherwise they're going to have a real incentive to chase me and catch me. On that basis, I rule out the kicker just before the finish and instead I decide we're going to go all in. We're going to gamble. You know how we love to gamble on this channel. We're going to go all in and we're going to gamble on Pot Bank and we're going to see, can we get away? Can we get a gap? Can we hold it? Can we take down the win having had nothing but mistakes for the first 3 laps of this race? So let's do this. Let's start the drama. Here we are at Pot Bank. This is what you all came to see. I've decided to go as hard as I possibly can. And we're going to see, can we get away? Can we get away with anybody? Can we try and give ourselves as good a chance as possible of winning this race? And you can see it all kicks off immediately on this climb. So we're having to do big numbers, over 400 watts on a 12%, just to stay with the front of the group. There was not even an attack there. That was just to stay in contention. But we come to the front of the group now. I'm out the saddle. I'm grinding. I'm going to try and hold it above 6 watts per kilo. See what we can do here. See, can we get a gap? because I know everybody is cooked. I'm cooked. We're all cooked like chickens, but who's cooked the most? I don't think it's me, so let's see what we can do. It's starting to work. We're already seeing gaps at the back of this group. People are starting to be binned off, as we like to say. I can see the top of the climb, so I realise I'm going to have to push on a little bit here if I want to get any separation, if I want to get a gap. I'd also be happy here if I didn't get away, but I reduced the group down to 2 or 3, maybe 4 riders. That'd also be a win. But as I look around me, I can see that the gap's starting to open up, and I have a gap over the rider behind me. David lets the wheel go, leaving Tucker on the front to try and push on or let the wheel go, and he elects to let the wheel go. They're all cooked. Their numbers drop. If you look around, they've all started to ease off the power, so I decide I really have to push on here. If I want to get anything out of this race, this is my moment. We're not going to back down. We're going to go all in, and whatever happens from here on out. As you can see from the block red on the bar at the bottom, I did what at the time was my best ever 5 to 8 minute power in a race, and it was at the end of a brutal stage that felt terrible, where everything went wrong. So I can be pleased with that. It looks like those watts are going to good use, as we can see those riders behind us are disappearing into their distance. That gap just gets bigger and bigger. They must have decided to let me go and take their chances, hoping they can pull me back before the finish. That means that David can sit in whilst they work and catch me, or I get away. So for us, this is the perfect scenario, really, and I'm basically being a great teammate and sacrificing myself so our team can get the win, and, you know, maybe so I can get the win too for the stage. But I'm confident that if I get caught, David's got a great chance here. There is always something super surreal when you are alone at the front of a race. You always feel like you shouldn't be there, like you're going to get in trouble, you're going to be told off, that it's off limits. Maybe that's because most of the time, that's because it's stupid to be off the front solo until the very end of the race. Even when it works, it feels weird. And this is where being a solo rider out front really comes back and bites you, because on the flat here, those riders are gaining on me. I had a 13-second gap, and it's just coming down, even though I'm killing myself. I've not really got any recovery between the last effort because I can't ease up. I've tried to take micro rests. I've tried to recover, but I'm really, really suffering. But they're gaining on me regardless, no matter what I do. So I feel at this point like I've really got not much in the tank. So maybe my best bet is go all in here on this little kicker just before the finish as hard as I can, and try to get whatever gap that I can over that chasing group and see if we can hold that on that final 2k descent to the finish. So let's go. This is it. Here we are. We're going to go all in here. Everything we got, let's try and open up that gap. It's at 7 seconds when we start the base of the climb, and I'm thinking they are going to go all in, and I'm going to have at least 1 or 2 people come and join the party, come and join the fun. Maybe David will jump across with them. We'll see what's what and who's who at the top of this climb, and we'll have a really good idea how this finish is going to go when we get to the top of this little rise, as we hit that 2k to go mark and we start the descent. And as we're grinding up here, can see that that gap's actually getting bigger and bigger. I put a couple of seconds into them, which really surprised me. I didn't think that would be the case. I thought they were going to get me. I thought they were going to jump onto me on this climb, and I was just going to be, that would be that. They'd come flying past me. But instead, that gap's opened up, and we've got 11 seconds over the chasers. Now, that's basically what we started with on Pot Bank. But I am really suffering here like I've never suffered before. We're making this look easy on the video, but I really can't get across to you how bad this was. The lactic acid in my legs was just in overdrive. I could barely turn the pedals. This ended up having the highest ever normalized power output that I'd done for over an hour by a long, long way. As we go over the top, I make a mistake there. I take my foot off the power, and I think that I'm going to go into the super tuck, but I don't. I'm just not going fast enough as a solo lightweight rider. That is an absolutely huge mistake that is going to come back and cost me big time, because that gap is just going to start to come down and down now. If I'd kept on pedaling there and just put the power through, maybe it would have stayed where it was for a little bit longer, and it wouldn't have started coming down so quickly. Instead, you have to be doing over 58, 59 kph and on a -2% to be doing the super tuck. So I wasn't going fast enough, and by the time I realised it's too late, and I'm trying to get into the super tuck here, but I just can't do it. Whereas the group behind me, I know from David, were doing the super tuck. They were going fast enough because there was a blob of them. And as we hit the 1k to go mark here under the Flamme Rouge, I've just lost 3 seconds in the last 500 meters. We've got 900 meters to go, and that gap has come down to 4-5 seconds. It's going to be really, really difficult to hold this off, but we're going to give it everything we've got, like we do in every race, every finish, every time we attack, every time we go for the win. We're going to empty the tank to complete exhaustion. That's what we do. And I've managed to keep that gap at 3 seconds. It hasn't really come down the last 300 meters, only by a second, but that group is within 50 meters of me now. You can see them at the bottom of the screen. 500 meters to the finish. We're going to go around this bend, and then we're going to be able to see the finish banner as this group comes bearing down on me. They are now within 35 meters. I'm coming around the corner. I'm trying to empty the tank. I'm just trying to give it everything I've got. Sprint as hard as I can with every last watt that I've saved over the course of this race. But as I do, the group is getting closer and closer. 20 meters. There's the finish. We're 150 meters away. The group is 12 meters, 10 meters, 9 meters. I'm within 100 meters of the finish, but the group comes flying past me and leaves me hanging on for 7th place, taking the win from under my nose, leaving me absolutely heartbroken. I was completely devastated. This was the most hard to take loss, hard to take race I've ever had. I really, really was gutted here. But as you saw from that leaderboard at the finish, it worked out perfectly because David was able to sit in and he took the win in the bunch sprint. He said to me afterwards, the only reason I had enough pep in the sprint to beat Rospondek at the end there was because they were chasing and I got to sit in. So it worked out well. And if you said to me, would you rather have 1st place and 7th place or 2nd place and 3rd place, I'd take 1st and 7th every day of the week. So what a crazy, crazy finish. Crazy, crazy race. Mistake after mistake. I thought we turned it around. I thought we'd learned. But as you saw at the end there, the mistakes still kept coming on the finish and they cost me big time. And when you lose by 1.5 seconds with 100 meters of the finish line to go, those mistakes that I made at the start of that race cost me the win. 100%. If I just managed that effort better at the start, not made those mistakes, I could have got the win there. Or if I'd saved it, gone later, gone on the kicker at the end, we saw I was able to open up a gap on them, I could have got the win there. So really good analysis here, and how not to win, but how important those mistakes are when you are talking fractions of seconds. The last 5 minutes of that were at over 5 watts per kilo. Like I say, the best 5-minute power I've ever done in a race, and it was at the end of it, so really, really pleased with that. And the normalized power for the whole race was 253 watts, so that's 4.15 watts per kilo for 1 hour 10. Easily the most power I've ever done for that sort of duration. I remember this race whenever I am out front alone attacking. I will never forget it. This race had it all. It is the most important race in my history because of the pain. I use it when I'm out front suffering. I remember that pain, I remember the agony of the loss, and it far outweighs the ecstasy of the win. So thank you for watching this one. I hope you learned something from it. I'm glad we could revisit my most painful defeat. My therapist said it's okay to talk about it now, so please like, comment, and most importantly subscribe, and remember to race fast, ride hard, and that you are appreciated.